Good evening, everybody, and how are we all doing today? It is another Sunday night live stream on the 17th of September, 2023. And as I am now calling these, it's the Veg Army Gathering today. You guys are the Veg Army. Lovely to see you. Hope you are all fantastic. Had a great week. Plenty of gardening. Been lovely weather, hasn't it? To say the least. Now, today we are going to be discussing what are your winter projects. This was just a subject that you guys wanted to cover last week, so I thought we're going to do it. We're going to do it. I've also got this week's mission, which was make some paper pots and a onion sew along. So that'll be coming up a little bit later on. First of all, let's see if we've got anybody out there. And right in at the beginning, Turbo Stream saying, good evening, Veg Podcasters. Good evening to you. Ballycillian is out there saying, good evening to everyone. Good evening to you. Adrian is out there saying, hello. Good evening to you. My dad is out there saying, good evening. Good evening to you. Stuart Jackson is out there. Evening, Richard and the Veg Army. Hope you're staying dry. We certainly needed that bit of rain, didn't we? Certainly needed that rain. Anna Jones, evening gardeners. Good evening to you. Alison O'Brien, evening. Oh, hope you are well. Hope you are well too. We got Digwell Greenfinger saying hi all. Good evening to you. And we have got Scott Ambler saying good evening all. Good evening to you. And then Turbo Stream. It's been very cloudy here in the Shire. Rain just started about 5 p.m. We had rain about 1 o'clock, I think it was. It's set in here. Very much needed though. Sun downpour of rain saved me water in the garden today, but very much needed. I do think we haven't had rain for quite a while again, and although I don't want it to rain that much, I do like a bit of sun, and it just makes things a little bit easier. Pauline King, hello, good evening, Richard. Hope you are doing well. Lovely to see you. Hope you are well too. And then we've got Kate out there. Good evening, Veg Army, on holiday in Pembrokeshire. How lovely. Hope you're having a great time. Trying to think, is there any gardens there to visit? I'm not familiar with Pembrokeshire, but I'm sure there is. And Chili Phil is out there saying good evening from the Chilies. Hello to the Chilies. Hope you are both well. So, what are we going to be discussing today? Today, we are going to be discussing, or the question I'm asking, what is your winter project plans? Now, this is always something that I like to plan well in advance. I always feel the winter time is much better. I should put my phone on silent. I always feel the winter is a much better time for doing a lot of the infrastructure jobs. Reason I say that is that a lot of our plants have died back or dead, which just makes it a little bit easier to see what you're doing. It also gives you something to do throughout the winter, so I don't fall into that trap of thinking I've got nothing to do, so I'm not going to bother going out in the garden. I find that actually having an excuse to get out in the garden just helps me keep motivated. And the other reason that I like to do these infrastructure tasks throughout the winter is that it's just a good opportunity to really do things. And what do I mean by these winter tasks? I'm talking about building new beds. A lot of people will leave those to the spring, but I always feel if you leave it to the spring, you then have to worry about sowing plants and getting all the other tasks done at the same time. So I just find that doing it through the winter means you can hit the spring running. Building paths, repairing beds, pruning your trees, or pruning other grapevines and bushes. Those sort of things I think is just a great thing to do throughout the winter months. So we'll quickly go to the comments and then I'll go through what my plans are. So Turbo Stream says, whereabouts Kate was camping there last week? Freshwater West, love Pembrokeshire. I don't think I've ever been to Pembrokeshire, I'll be honest, but I'd like to get there at some point. Kate says, been raining here, but perfectly fine in a cosy cottage with a fire. I have already found the wall gardens and somewhere to buy plants. That's exactly what I do. I went on honeymoon in St. Lucia is a good example. And we went and visited a botanical garden because why wouldn't you? You know, you got to do these things. Even the gardener at our hotel, we had to spend a bit of time chatting to. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? Turbo Stream says my winter plans include digging up a few brambles. Yeah, a good opportunity for that, isn't it? Good opportunity to dig up brambles and other things that we need to remove. Scott says my winter plan is to use some bricks I have to build a barbecue / cooking station on the allotment. Good idea. I like that. I used to be able to barbecue on our allotment and I used to love it. I would set the barbecue up, cook something or slowly cook something while I worked. Beautiful. Not they banned barbecues on our allotment now, but I think it's a great idea, Scott. Absolutely brilliant. Hopefully you will send us some pictures of the build or even a video or something when it's done. Stuart says my winter plans will be change my veg patch into a soft fruit bed, then build new veg beds, move the veggie pod at home. So more infrastructure jobs going on there. Exactly what I'm looking for. Kate says I'm in Stackpole, was in Freshwater. Yes, they had a sea shanty gourd playing at a pub where they did the best crab sandwiches everywhere and anywhere ever. Love it. Good enough. Good enough. Richard Golding has joined. Good evening to you. How are those puppies? How are they getting on? I was going to avoid talking about dogs because I'm very angry about something. You can probably guess what it is. We won't get into that. Stuart says, at school we have 6 new raised beds to put together and prep for the spring. Fantastic. Where did you get these 6 new beds from? They sound brilliant. Pauline says, Ian and Sarah should explain it. Pauline's my auntie and she's all the way in Canada. Ian and Sarah listened to a talk yesterday about winter gardening in freezing temps. They're going to give it a go this year. Looking forward to trying it. Good idea. I mean, it's slightly harsher environment than what we have here. So I'll be very interested to see how you all get on with that. My thoughts would be you need to sort of put some sort of defense up, a cloche, a climbing frame, a greenhouse or something. And my other thought was like the old pineapple houses where they have fresh manure around the building to warm it up. But I'll have to find out more about that. It's not something I've had to deal with. Nicola says, evening all, sorry for being missing in the last few weeks. No problem, I was worried about you. Hope you are okay. Anne says, building new compost bins in a new location. Actually, that's a very good infrastructure job. Something that we could probably all do with, actually. Build new compost bins, new locations and so on. Turbo Stream says, I want to reorganize my main growing square with 3 long beds too. Excellent. So, yeah, a lot of people talking about rejigging their allotment or their growing area. I think that comes with experience. And I've always said that my garden's always evolving. I'm always adding extra things that I want to do every now and then from what I've learned over this last year. Changes I feel are necessary. What else? Hargrave Gas is out there. Sorry I'm late. Hope everyone has had a great week. Lovely to see you. Bethan's Kitchen and Garden says, I will be building cloches to cover some brassicas, leeks and carrots to keep out those pesky pests. Fantastic. So what type of cloches are you making? Are you talking about the hoop frames or wooden frames? Let us know. Chinny Phil says, one of our winter projects is to tackle a part of the allotment we've not touched yet in the hope we can extend the soft fruit bed for next year. Good idea. Again, I feel this is a good time for doing it. If you're going to dig out some weeds, I know I'm a no digger, but if you do have brambles or something, easier to dig out throughout the winter months, clear out the area, even get the mulches going as well. So good idea indeed. Ballycillian says, my main project will be to recover one of the polytunnels, and this time I'm going to fit automatic opening windows for better airflow during hot weather. That's a good idea. Again, polytunnels, they do need the occasional bit of TLC, and recovering them is probably a good idea to do it during the winter. However, One thing I do think that we often don't think about with polytunnels or greenhouses is actually use them through winter for growing produce. We often store our plants in there. I like to try and still get lettuces or salady crops growing in the greenhouse in order to keep our food supplies up high. So Kate has said, my winter plan is to design and dig my wildlife pond on the allotment, also dig out the out of control raspberry area to get it tidy. Also move my black currants and construct some more raised beds. Excellent. Yeah. Wildlife pond, great idea. I installed one in my house this year and we've definitely seen some benefits for it. Although I'm going to rejig it a bit soon as well. And raspberries, yes, another good idea to dig them out. They're always difficult to keep raspberries in control, isn't it? It's one of those problematic plants, but at least they give us food. They do grow a bit like weeds, don't they? Digwell says, my only real plan for February/March is to start the straw bale project. Too early to set up before then. I started mine, I think it was March. For me, it just didn't work. So I'll be interested to see how you get on with it, Digwell. Bethan says, also going to use the wood I've lying around to finish off compost heaps and make shelves for strawberry pots and general tidying up. Don't we all need that good general tidying up all the time, it seems sometimes, doesn't it? Turbo Sims Kate, you need to go to talking about the holiday, so we'll skip that. Oh, sorry, don't mean to be rude, we'll skip that. The beds are recycled plastic, one for each class, but it's up to the children what to grow. They are planning as we speak. Fantastic, Stuart. Okay, it's quite a good conversation going here. Amanda has joined. Evening all. Good evening, Amanda. Hope you are well. We are talking about your winter project plans. Pauline says, yeah, they will be covered beds in a sunny spot in the garden. Apparently, if they are growing before it gets too cold, they will continue to grow. We will let you know how it goes. That's actually really interesting because I would like to learn more about, because we don't get those freezing temperatures that you guys get. It'd be really interesting to find out more about that. Nicholas has been building new shed base to move out of courtyard to move static to different positions. That's one of the things I've got to do as well. On the allotment, move a shed. I've got to dismantle an old compost bin, move the shed, and what have you. So I bet you've been doing this. That's why you've been absent lately. Not a problem. Hope it's all going well down there. Love to see a bit of a update at some point if that's possible. Turbo Stream says the long beds will be divided up into sections using old bamboo canes and the odd raspberry cane. Indeed, good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah. What else? Kate says good shouts. Oh, talking about this holiday. Sorry, I don't mean to skip your holiday. Just a lot of comments coming in on this subject. Bethan says the hoop frames which I can hinge onto the side of my wooden beds. I may also cover them in polythene so I can grow salad greens over the winter. Good idea, actually. Interestingly, tallying up with what Pauline is saying as well, thinking about what combining Bethan and Alter Cold, something I've delved into in the past and probably should. I'm having real trouble with my words tonight. Delved into in the past is the hot beds, where basically you're composting in the bed, you have hoop frame on top, and you're using the heat of everything rotting down to keep everything else warm. That might be something, a winter project we actually do here as well. I'm going to make a note of that because I think that's going to be a great idea. Hotbed. Make a note of that. Nicola says, having rear meadowed terraced at the beginning of October for new raised beds. Excellent. So you're going to be getting those raised beds in throughout the winter months as well. What else have we got? Turbo Stream, a few slabs to be moved. One gets slippery and is loose and needs to paint the shed too. Yeah, could do doing that as well. Bonnie Soon says, I've got 2 polytunnels, so we'll be growing over winter in the small 12-foot one and recover the 16-foot one. It is that is benched for sowing the potted chilies, etc. So we'll be ready for spring. Excellent, excellent. Turbo Stream also will be mulching with compost and leaf mold. Of course, we've always got to do that. Keep on top of the mulch, compost, and leaf mold, particularly. Amanda says, I need to build some brassica frames, hoping to build something I can move from bed to bed along with my crop rotation. Absolutely. Yeah, you just made me rethink some of my plans by saying that. Now, talking about so I've always tried to keep my beds the same size, but I was looking at changing them up slightly or building new beds and changing them up, but then that just throws everything else. By keeping them the same size means the same cloches could be used, but you've got me thinking otherwise now. Chili Kate says, I'm here now too, just dealing with a mud-soaked football kit. My main priority will be to finally sort out a wildflower bed. Loads of bulbs, which we had to grow in pots this spring. Yep. I personally, I think when it comes to daffodils and tulips, first year, I haven't got any here actually. The first year ones, I think, are best in the pots, and then they go into the ground in the second year. So, yeah, all good there. Anna says, I'll also be tipping out my compost bins and doing some mulching. Fantastic, fantastic. So lots of stuff going on there. Scott says, I will be giving all my beds a good mulch over winter this year. Didn't do it so much last year. A 3 cubic meter of well-watted horse manure ordered. Bit of an expense, but hopefully it'll pay off with loads of fruit and veg. Indeed, I'm sure it will. Brian's Garden Polytunnel has joined. Good evening to you. Now, keep your winter project ideas coming, because it's actually changing a lot of my ideas talking to you guys anyway. But I'll run through what my ideas are. Down on the allotment, I'm pretty happy with how things are on the allotment. Just need a really good tidy up, get rid of any of the rubbish and things that we no longer need. So we're going to give it. So down on the allotment, pretty much everything is there. The beds are built. We've got a few beds that we might just need a bit of tidying up. But what we want to really concentrate on the allotment, I've already mentioned this, is I've taken down will take down my wooden compost bin because it's so rotten, it needs to go. We're going to then move my little shed where the compost bin is. And then what that's going to enable me to do is actually open up and dig up and move my cherry tree and my apple tree that are in the corner. I put them in too close. I only gave them about 1 meter each, and that wasn't enough. And I want to move those 2 trees along the border to give it a bit more space. Being the winter months, it's going to be much easier to dig up and move trees than it is going to be during the summer months. And of course, because the soil's moist, they're going to establish that much better. So on the allotment, that is my winter plans. The beds are built. Oh, greenhouse glass. We need more greenhouse glass. So that is one big plan that we do need to, if I can find enough glass. Although I might hold off till spring with that, until storm season, because we normally end up losing quite a bit of glass during the windy weather. So on the allotment, that is my plans. Now at home, I actually took a few photos today. It is a bit of a mess, I'll be honest with you, but it should be good enough to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So this is the end of my garden near my house. The washing line is over. If you look at that pole at the front, that's our washing line. Every year I correct it, and then it falls over gradually throughout the year. I've got to remove that or replace that washing line and move it somewhere else. But what you see towards the middle of the garden is 2 areas where I've been building or built new beds this year. This is the first one, which I just used the Charles Dowding method, cardboard and compost. We had tomatoes grown in there which have got infected with blight. And then there's nasturtiums as well. I don't like not having edges in our garden, I'll be honest. I want wooden edges just because I just find it easier to maintain and what have you. I think if I had a massive garden, I probably wouldn't have edges, but in my garden, I need edges. So what I want to do, and on the other side of that path sort of thing is the straw bale garden. As you can see, I've put some pots on top because the straw bales just weren't working. So what I want to do in those two areas is what I originally planned is to build two beds on either side of the path, the same size as the four beds I have at the tops. But what I'm thinking now is it needs to be a little bit different, just some sort of different sizing up, some changes. In fact, I was having a conversation with somebody that we might be working with to design a bed that needs to be 3 meters long by 90 centimeters wide. I don't want to say too much, it may not happen, but there's something going on there. So I'm thinking what I'm going to do now on either side of the path that runs down the middle of the grass. I say path, it's more just a grass area for Roxy to run up and down as well. I want to have two beds either side that are 3 meters long, 90 centimeters wide, and then but on either side, two 1 meter square beds. That way, I think then it's just going to look a little bit less boring, different sizes, and hopefully should just tidy things up. As I said, I'm not happy with not having the edges like I have on the other beds. Just makes things a little bit easier, I found. And then what else have I got? The other area that I'm concentrating on outside this is this area here. It's a bit of a mess because I've moved a load of pot plants there for the time being because I'm in the middle of sorting something else out. But towards the back in front of the greenhouse is a slabbed area. And what I want to do, I'll bring that picture up, is at the back, I'm going to remove all those trees. There's a castor oil plant, a twisted hazel tree, and some other tree. I want to take all three of those out, and then I'm going to deck the entire area and then build at the back where those trees are some sort of cold frame or raised cold frames, you know, like I can't think what they're called now, grow houses type thing. It's at the back there, and then cold frames along the block, that bottom at the front, have a lot lower. That way I can then just start my seeds off in that sort of area, have a bit of organization, and hopefully it'll tidy up that area. That's my plan for the winter. And then in the greenhouse, what I want to do is basically the greenhouse is going to be more for seed sowing, not so much growing plants in the summer. I've got the greenhouses on the allotment for growing plants in. So what I'm going to be doing is just making a good seed sowing bench in there with lots of shelving storage units, as well as somewhere to have starting off what's electric for heater propagators and things like that. So lots of plans going on. Richard Vobes says, sad news about Sean James Cameron. Yeah, I did hear about that. It's a lot of stuff going on, isn't there, at the moment? Turbo Stream says, I need to improve my brassica protection too and trying to improve the raspberry bed. They are out of control this year. Yeah, this one, I mean, it's a great time, isn't it, to start reflecting on what you've learned from this year to move forward in order to really make it better for next year. This is why I always say gardening is never really completed and it always going on. Digwell says, word is the bug is being worked on as it's affecting the thousands of channels. Is that the I can't think what it's called, but I have heard about the bug. Pauline says, I just realized what your t-shirt is. Yeah, horseradish. Some people may have seen this t-shirt before. Horseradish. I've got quite a few t-shirts that are sort of vegetable related for that very reason. Not Lisa from Not Just Green Fingers UK blog. Sorry, I'm really struggling to get my words out today. Evening all, hope everyone is well. Richard, your garden looks fab. Thank you very much. Hope you are well. I haven't been on TikTok much to see what you're doing. Stuart says, one job I must do this winter is move my cherry tree. That's why I think it's best to do it in winter, because the leaves are all dropped, its energy is going to be in the roots, and it's also going to be moist around the roots when you replant it. So for me, wintertime is a great time to do that sort of thing. Turbo Stream says, my aim is to make my plot easier to work and more productive and more tidy. I think that's everyone's plan, isn't it? I definitely think I've increased my production quite a bit this year, and I've definitely made it much more efficient. I think efficiency is the key word that I would use. Efficiency. Brian's Garden Polytunnel. My major winter project is to plan my beds and pots to be able to access everything. Yeah, a great idea. I know it's not easy for you at the moment, but yeah, plan your beds and pots. Are you able to get some help as well, Brian, with building things and things like that? If you're going to be needing better access, I mean, I've got the veggie pods here, which I think are great things, especially in your circumstances, but they are quite pricey. But something along those lines might work quite well. Digwell says many channels are being demonetized because of invalid traffic views. Seems it has happened since YouTube's linking policy update, where others can use your video as adverts, but you get the views. Interesting. Digwell says the bots flag these as auto views, or you clicking on your own videos. Oh, is this that thing? Bethan was asking. Yeah, I did hear something about that. They're flagging it up as possible invalid views. You know what it's like sometimes. No help available, says Brian. I wish I was closer, Brian. If I was closer, I would come up and help you. If I remember correctly, you're Newcastle way, aren't you? I probably offended people by saying that at the same time. Let me know whereabouts you are. I know you're up north somewhere, which is nowhere near me. He said, I've had to drop the idea of collapsible staging. Yeah, collapsible. Yeah, I'm not. Oh, we get Manchester. Sorry, nowhere near Newcastle. I did sort of think it might be. It's up north. It's up north for me. Yeah, if I was closer, I'd try and do something to help. Let me get back to you. I'll see what we can do. Turbo Extreme says, I have been disappointed with my crops and only really produced enough to last half the winter. That's interesting. I've had a really good year this year. I mean, our freezers are completely full. I've just got rid of our fridge freezer because it was taking up space, but I could actually really do with it. I need to defrost one of my freezers and I've got nowhere to put the food. But our freezers are really, really full. And our larders, we pickled a lot of stuff, made chutneys. We've done really well this year. I reckon by the end of this year, we would have harvested over £4,000 worth of food the way it is going. We've done really, really well. And it's great. So but I want to make things more efficient. This is a key thing that I'm taking into next year, more efficient, because what I've done is by gardening, I guess you could say less, but I'm doing little and often. I'm gardening in the morning at home, in the evening at the allotment. I'm doing a lot more, but spread out across the entire week. And it's just making things a lot more efficient. And that's what I'm carrying on with the design of the allotment. Lisa's asking, have I missed something? What's going on with Sean James Cameron? He's taken down his channel, I believe. He put a video out yesterday. There's a bug going around and it's caused a lot of issues and people have been demonetized, and unfortunately it looks like that's happened to Sean. I've got to admit, in his video he looked like he was about to burst into tears, a poor guy, so I felt very sorry for him. Turbo Stream says everywhere is north of Littlehampton. That's not true. France is to the south, is all I can say to that, but you are right, everywhere is north. I mean, I went up to Essex the other day and I sort of said, this is north for us. The other week. Digwell says the problem with collapsible staging is it has a habit of collapsing when not asked to. Absolutely, yeah. The collapsible staging I've seen on the market, I don't think are very good because of that habit of collapsing. What I was looking at when I was looking at building some collapsible staging is actually there's shelf brackets you can buy from B&Q, but you also pull this sort of lever underneath and the shelf bracket closes in. They really lock into place. As long as they're not overweighted, they should be good when it comes to collapsible staging. Brian's Garden Polytunnel. Up to 5 years ago, I could give advice to people in my position like there was no tomorrow. Now my thoughts have changed. One good idea can have a knock-on effect elsewhere. Yeah, Brian, that is completely true. I don't want to mention your personal situation to anybody without your permission, so this might be a bit cryptic to many people, but I completely agree. Nobody knows what it's like unless they're walking in your shoes. I can offer lots of different advice, different ideas, but that's all it is. It's different ideas, different advice. I'm not walking in your shoes, so I completely understand what you're saying there. Turbo Stream says the beans have been a complete failure. The butternut squash hasn't even flowered yet. There's still time. Can you send next year's seeds early next year? When I think butternut squash went out in June, which was a little late. The trouble is March, April, May, June. There's so many seeds that can be sown. It becomes a little tricky. I mean, my butternut squashes are flowered and producing. They're tiny little things at the moment, but they will grow. Beans. Why have your beans been a failure? But I've had trouble with peas. They've been a failure this year, but beans, not too bad. Bellotti beans particularly. It has been weird weather though this year. That's one thing we can't control. It's probably weather related, thinking about it. Nick, everywhere is north to me. Actually, Nicola's even further south than me. So yes, yeah. And it says blighted potatoes, rotten lettuce, and useless French beans in my garden. Not a good year. It's been such a tricky year with the weather because we had a dry spring, a wet summer, and now a warm autumn. It's just so all wrong, isn't it? It's all the wrong way. I think even winter was quite harsh too, thinking about it. Digwell says, my chilies are having a second growth spurt. We saw strawberries as well the other day. Somebody posting pictures of strawberries. Weather has just been crazy. Brian works wonders, a mentor for us all. Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely, I agree with that. He does have a YouTube channel if anybody wants to go and check that out. Nicholas says, a winter project here. New raised beds after terracing the IBC tank area to finish having wooden raised staging to sit it on the new roof. So, the IBC tanks where you're storing all your water, isn't it? So, what size are your raised beds going to be? Obviously, Nicola down in Cornwall with, I forget what the heavy metal is in your soil. Arsenic in the soil causes problems on her farm. What else have we got? Lisa says, I'm planning to grow my cut flowers at home next year as I spend ages deadheading at the allotment and would prefer to do this at home. I'll be growing veg at my allotment so I spend less time there. You know what, Lisa? I've always said this. I've always felt that my garden is where I want to do the things that need more attention. I want my allotment to almost be able to look after itself, whereas all my plants at home are what need the most attention. So potatoes, I always grow potatoes on the allotment because they're pretty good at looking after themselves. Same as the squash plants are beans and garlic and onions. Whereas at home is where I want to try and concentrate on growing the more plants that need more care, the lettuces, the salad leaves, etc., etc. So I'm totally with you on that, Lisa. Totally with you. My butternuts took ages to flower. I think lots of people have found this year. It has been a funny year. It has been a funny year. The trouble is when butternuts usually flower, summertime, we were just having rain. They're probably going to start flowering now with this warm weather, but who knows? Who knows? Digwell says, my runner beans have just came into their own so late. Again, we've had plenty. I don't like runner beans. I grow them for the wife, but we've had plenty of runner beans and they've done really, really well. I've been lucky in that circumstance. My situation is not a problem. I'm an amputee in a wheelchair. It doesn't stop me thinking of being genuinely pleased with other people's successes. Fair enough. So yeah, I didn't want to say had too much, but yeah, Brian, the reason we have been saying Brian is setting up his allotment with challenges is he's an amputee in a wheelchair, as he says. So if, as I said, if I was like, I would come up and help you, Brian, and try and put something together that we could come up with and see if it works for you. I've got lots of ideas, but it's what works for you. However, we'll see what we can do. I'll see if I can muster some help for you if people who may live nearby. Nicholas says, veg beds I bought 3 summers ago have failed already, using second-hand decking boards around pallet collars. It's interesting, isn't it? That's why I don't use pallets anymore, because I just find the wood falls apart too easily these days. So I've recently got some. It's made from sheep's wool. It's like a wood treatment. You paint it on, and the oils on it sink into the wood. And I'm hoping it's non-toxic, so I'm hoping that's going to work well at preserving some of the beds or some of our wooden structures and things. Because of that very reason, 3 summers, my pallets didn't last that long. So, although thick wood is better. Going for things needed to hand, like herbs, absolutely, yeah. Herbs, salad leaves should be at home, things that you just want to grab and eat pretty quickly. Beans didn't germinate till mid-July, then it was cold and wet. I've given up this year, completely lost interest in it, to be honest. We'll concentrate on preparing for next year instead. Sometimes, TurboStream, that is a much better attitude. You are thinking for next year. Obviously, you will get some seeds continuing right throughout the winter anyway, but you're thinking for next year already. So, you know, I've got empty beds on my allotment. We're preparing those for next year. Green manures are a good thing, obviously, mulching and all those sort of things. Bethan says, my Blue Lake climbing beans have just started growing flowers and beans again. I was about to take them out, but I'm leaving them to grow again now. It's because we've had this warm spell, the plants have just gone, oh, it's summer again. I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to show myself off. And that's what's going on. I predicted this as soon as I saw this hot weather coming a few weeks ago, this hot spell. And it could happen again. It could happen again. I think we're going to have rain for the next week, but then we get another warm spell. And who knows what winter's going to be like, of course. 6 by 3 meter blow away polytunnel, having new raised pliers and polycarb below and proper polyplastic. Not sure what that is, sorry. New beds are pallet collars with decking around it, all lined with damp proof material that should stop the wood rotting away. One lot of runner beans were blown over in the storm. I've had that trouble as well. Onions were poor, leaf minor. My only success were the cauliflowers. We've had good cauliflowers this year as well, actually. I must sow some cauliflowers this year. Remind me to do that. Right, guys, I asked you to set me a mission last week, and that happened. Stuart Jackson was the one that set the mission, and that was to make some paper pots. So let's go have a look at this. Right, guys, this week's mission was set by Stuart Jackson, and it was to make some paper pots, something that I know Stuart does a lot of. Now, one of the complications I think many of us are having with this is that we don't really get newspapers anymore. But what we do get instead, and this is what I'm using, is junk mail. This is a nice bit of paper we're going to use. I've cut some of it already down into smaller strips to make it a little bit easier. And what we're going to do is make paper pots. So let me show you how I'm making these. So as I said, we're taking some of these bits of paper and we're going to turn these into little paper pots. Now usually we would wrap these around a nice glass or even paper making pots that we might have. I haven't got any of those today that are suitable because these need to be quite small. So I'm just doing this by hand and I'm just wrapping them to make a nice sort of circular tube. Then what I'm going to do is just staple these together like so. Now there is a risk when stapling things together that the staple, if you're growing something like carrots, might end up in your food. So for that reason, this is a stapleless stapler that I prefer to use. And it basically, all it does is just folds a bit of paper over to stop it from coming apart. Do need, unfortunately, on this end I've made it a little bit poor, so it needs somewhere decent for it to work. There we go, that's better. That just, I find, holds these together a little bit better. Now what we're going to do is make the bottom. So on this very bottom we just fold it over like so. Might have to do it a few times just to try and make a good solid seal, and then what we've got to do, just force it down on the ground. There we go, we've got our paper pot ready to go. So let me show you how I done that again. Fold it into a tube, stapleless stapler there, and again we'll fold this bottom end in like so. Make sure we get a nice crisp crease on it. And there we go, number 2. Right, so in total I've made 5 of these paper pots today. Now the good thing is all we got to do next is fill them up with compost, put our seed in, let them grow, and then we can just take this paper and put it straight in the ground. But more on that a little bit later on with the sow along. Right, back to the studio. Indeed, back to the studio. So that was this week's mission, make some paper pots. You guys need to come up with a mission that I can do for next week. Now I've mentioned a paper pot maker, and this is what we were talking about by paper making pot. You'd wrap the paper around there and then you fold it over and then you force it into there to make the bottom solid. It's a bit better using it than the way I was doing it in there, and I was making small ones in that scenario. But the stapler for me, that has always been a good or much better way of just holding the top together. Don't need staples and you don't end up eating staples by accident. Just uses paper. Great idea, I think. Turbo Stream says the raspberries have done well that my late friend planted. Fantastic. It's always good, isn't it, when that happens? Raspberries have soft fruit has done pretty well this year. I've got to say, we've had plenty of cherries. Cherries were probably before the rain set in, but cherries, raspberries, we have another flush of raspberries at the moment. Currants have been good. Soft fruits have done well for me anyway. I said we've done pretty well this year, but there have been a few failures, of course. Brian says, my runner bean surprised me. I only had one Scarlet Emperor and one Cobra after slugs finished them. Excuse me. Instead of binning them, I planted them in my beds. The return from them was phenomenal. Fantastic. I'm just trying to think. Our peas have been a failure this year. Well, very few peas. So that might be where my fail. And what was the other thing that we failed? There was something else as well. Something else, and I can't think what it is for this. Mission for next week: find a decent, affordably, consistently good peat-free compost. I I can do that because I already can think of what. But let's see what everybody else says. Decent. In fact, I can come up with consistent peat compost. See what I can come up with. Two, thinking about it, two suppliers. We have got a hello from Logan's Veg Patch. Hello to you. Hope you are well. Trying to think. Yeah, trying to think if it's somebody who you think who I think you are. I could be wrong. Could be very wrong. Ignore me. Well, don't actually, because that wouldn't work for the show, would it? Lisa says, I love homemade pots. I get old newspapers from Free Cycle. I make newspaper pots using baked bean tin and soya sauce bottle for smaller pots to wrap around the paper around. I use a bit of masking tape at the bottom and the side as this decomposes with the newspaper. Good idea. Good idea. I'm trying to be. I'm trying to use only natural materials these days. I mean, it's pretty easy, but I want everything to be compostable, biodegradable that I use in the garden. You know, things like, I think it was you guys that mentioned about the netting for peas being twine. I've got to find some of that, but little things like that I'm going to be using. And that's, again, why I use the stapler, because it doesn't leave staples in the ground, doesn't leave anything that rots down. Kate says, the raspberries have been great. I inherited them from my previous plot holder and had become quite unruly. So once I get them in line, they will be amazing. It takes up a load of space at the moment. Yeah, I mean, that's a good thing with raspberries, I think. They do take up quite a bit of space. They do have this horrible habit of moving around, but they provide us with plenty of food. I've dug up some of the spare raspberry plants and I've given those away to people. I'm actually out the front, as you know, our driveway garden, as I call it. We've been growing raspberries in pots out the front. Needs lots of care, lots of watering, but they're not going to spread so much. And they're producing fantastic raspberries out the front. We've been getting quite a few out there. A bit of adjustment going on out the front, but yeah. Growing them in pots is probably a good idea for raspberries to stop that sort of habit of them moving everywhere where you don't want them, or making them so they can't. The runners can't decide to take up and move into your paths and things. Just have a swig of coffee. By the way, guys, I should remind you at this point, please do give us a like. Please do give us a thumbs up. Please do give us a follow. Please do give us a subscribe. And don't forget to click the notifications so you know when we go live. I know most of you are doing that anyway, but if you haven't, please go ahead and do it. Brian says, my best peat-free compost I found this year is by mixing my own using coconut coir. I really should have thought of this before planting my tomatoes. Things might have been better. LOL. I know a lot of people have had trouble with peat-free compost this year. There's been videos and photos of some of you guys from decent compost manufacturers where you've had bits of credit card or stones or bricks in your compost, which that's not good. I have found coconut coir. If you saw the potatoes in pots in different compost videos, I thought the coir, they weren't the most amount of potatoes, but they grew the best looking potatoes, was what I thought out of that whole experiment. So I'm still unsure about coir. I know it does. Or there has been trouble with people struggling to keep it hydrated, but I've got mixed opinions on coir. Mixed opinions. Turbo Stream says, I dug up the runners of the raspberry canes and took them to my cousins in Carlisle. Good stuff. Good stuff. I did that. I dug up some from the allotment and brought them home, and I've probably got to take them back down to the allotment at some point because I've got none of the summer raspberries in that area on the allotment anymore, although I've got to tidy that area completely up. That's a winter project, actually, tidy it up. Kate says, I like my crafts as well, and I've been looking at YouTube videos on making fishing nets, and I'll be using twine for my next bean area. That would be great, Kate, actually. Perhaps that could be a mission for next year, to make our own pea nets out of twine. That could be an idea. Digwell says, be careful with the word biodegradable on garden products. It's used much like organic to sort of con unknown users. Car engine oil is biodegradable and the Ebola virus is organic. Of course. You are right, though. I found this is going to be slightly odd thing to talk about, but I wanted biodegradable dog bags, shall we call them. Basically just so I felt a little bit better. But what I found is, even though they say biodegradable, they are not home compostable. So biodegradable and being home compostable is two different things. And the label we really want to find is home compostable. It doesn't actually exist, I don't think, as a label, but I think that is the label us gardeners need. Just my thoughts on it. Nicola says, I need to get some raspberry canes. I probably could dig some up for you, Nicola, if you want. Let me know when you're around. Turbo Swoop says, I splashed out and bought John Innes compost. The normal multi-purpose compost has gone down in quality. We'll experiment with leaf mold 2 next year. Yeah, I mean, if I'm gonna do this mission, which I think would be a good one. I mean, it's going to be hard to prove it, but if I do this mission, I've got a few ideas of decent, consistently good, decent compost, and where to get it from. So how do I prove it? How do I prove it is going to be the tricky thing. But that for me is the point of a mission. So if you guys think I should do that, let us know. The older Jiffy 7 pellets take 2 to 3 years to rot down. So the newer ones are a bit quicker. So the Jiffy 7 pellets, for those that don't know, are the sort of discs of compressed compost that you pull into water to rehydrate them, and they expand, and they usually have a little dimple on the top that you can drop your seed into. They normally have a little bag around the outside to hold them together as well. So that's, I suspect, is probably the bag bit that doesn't break down. It takes 2 to 3 years. Probably plastics in it, I suspect, which is something I know we are meant to be not trying to have more or have in our gardens anymore. Plastics, isn't it? Nicholas says, my new compost bays are now filling up. 4 by 5 foot by 6 foot, 3 fields. That's a lot of compost. That is a lot of compost. That's something I do want to talk about, actually. Compost bays. I think we've discussed compost bins and bays before, but there's a site I look after, and I was in their area, and I saw their compost bays. The site is a stately home. It's got beautiful gardens. I think they open it up for weddings and things like that. But the compost bays I could drive my van into, and there still be enough room to get out the van. They were that big, and they were full. That's the type of compost bays we need, really, if it was possible. Digwell says, the newer mesh bags on the Jiffy 7s are made from plant-based plastics. That's what we want to hear, isn't it? Plant-based plastics. Although in some ways well, no. I think the original plastic was made from butter, if I remember correctly. So that makes sense. Thanks, Richard. End of the month up. Also, globe artichokes if you want to get rid of it. Okay, I will dig those out for you. Not a problem. Scott says, never made leaf mold. Keep saying I will, but never get round to it. Maybe a future challenge. Yep, that's a challenge we can also do. A mission challenge. You get the idea. We are going to be soon very soon actually heading into leaf mold making time. Looking around, a lot of leaves are starting to turn brown and wither and die. There's going to be a lot of leaf fall, so we're going to have to make leaf mold pretty soon. That could be a good challenge that we do here a little bit later on. Right, so anybody else got any more winter projects that they want to do? One thing I do want to do throughout the winter months is actually go through my seed collection. I try and do this every winter, but they just seem to grow and grow and grow and grow. And this winter, I really want to sit through all my seed boxes and try and reduce them down and get them a little bit more organized. That way I can have a better plan moving on into the next year. As I said, it's all about being more efficient next year so that it makes things a little bit quicker. So that's another task that a project I want to do throughout the winter. Anne says compostable compost bags might work as doggy bags. The trouble is, again, actually, I've tried compostable compost bags in the past as well, and I found that they didn't break down either. They just seem to stay the same, which isn't what I thought compostable meant. I know some of the later or the newer nuggets, you know, when you buy something from Amazon and it comes with those little polystyrene nuggets that just stop all the damage. They're now made from maize and they're meant to be compostable, but I've stuck them in a compost bin once and they were still the same. What I found with those, you've actually got to stick them in water and they dissolve away, which then you can add the water to the compost bins. It's just maize, so it's fine for the compost bin. But the compostable compost bin bags, I didn't find composted away. That was in a wormery thinking about it, so it might be different in a hot compost bin. But if they work for you, let us know. Let us know. Chili Phil says, I made leaf mold last year for the first time. Need to go and check on its progress taking. Yeah, please do send a picture in. Love to see it. We'll have a look at some pictures in a moment as well, actually. Thomas Stream, I need to borrow more leaves from the bottom gate before the fresh ones arrive. Still loads left. Grab them while you can. Grab them while you can. It's compost material. Even if you don't use it for leaf mold, it's still materials you can use for the compost. And we all need to make more and more compost. Bethan says, I'm hoping to put a small pond into my back garden and contact a local hedgehog rescue place so that we can home hedgehogs. Good stuff. I've had a hedgehog home for a few years, but the hedgehogs are not finding it. I've got hedgehogs back in my garden, but they don't. I put a hedgehog home. They don't live in it. They'll sooner live underneath the shed, to be honest with you, rather than what do you call it? Rather than these wooden things that we tend to try and give them. Chili seeds for me too, but every time I have a clear out, more appear through the letterbox. Yeah, sorry about that. But those seeds that I send each month, they are to be sown that very month. So if you're sowing them all, you may not sow them all, I know, but they are designed to be sown that very month, so they're not hanging around. Digwell says starch-based window envelopes seem to take ages to rot down too. Starch-based window envelopes seem to take ages to rot down too. They might need soaking in water to break them down. Might be what it needs. Turbo Stream says, I want compostable compost that composts. Tongue twister. Compostable compost that composts. Got it there. Got it there. He also says, actually, a winter job I need to do more of is microgreens. Note to self. Yeah, microgreens. You know, I'm a big fan of pushing the microgreens throughout the winter months. Something we're going to do a lot of as well. That's why I need to sort out my seeds. Right. Let's go back to the video. Now, this was the sew along. This was something else that Stuart Jackson said was to sow onions in his paper pots. So let's have a look. All right, so it's back here in the greenhouse to sow some seeds. And we did sow some of these a few weeks ago, but we're doing it again. It is some onion seeds, and this year time we're growing Senshi Yellow, which should be a good one. So come down here, let's get these seeds sown. So what we're going to do is, because we're going to be sowing these in these paper pots, we're just going to try, this isn't going to be easy, try and get the soil inside a few of these. I'm using my usual mix of seed sowing compost and a bit of perlite added in there. It's what I usually use for seeds. Actually, this is going a bit easier than I thought it would. Just pouring that compost into here. I don't know if you can see it very well on the camera what I'm doing. I'll try and angle it so you can see. There we go. It's amazing, these paper pots actually take shape much better when they have compost in them. They hold their shape a lot better once they've got compost in them. So we'll do one more like that. I'm going to also, there we go, sow a few seeds into one of these at the same time, just to balance things out and try and make it a bit of a test. What I'm also going to do, just bring one of these across just to hold some of these paper pots in place for the time being, like so. What we'll do is squeeze a few in here, like so. So let's get on with the seed sowing. Hopefully you're still with me. Now these seeds, Senshi Yellow, say they can be sown between August and September, so it is a good time to sow them. I'm just opening the packet up here, and that is what the seeds look like. I'm sure you've seen enough of them by now. We're going to try and drop a single seed in each pot. These are quite a small seed, so it's not easy. The hope is that every single seed is going to germinate and grow into a nice onion. That is the hope. So what I'm going to do is just sow the rest of these seeds in here. These ones might need pricking out, will need pricking out I should say, at a later date. But I think that's going to be interesting just to see the comparison between how they grow when they're not disturbed and how they are like so. Now all we've got to do next, just scatter over a bit more of this compost. I would be using my sieve, but I've just realised I've left it outside. We'll scatter over some of that, and then I'll tamp that back down, and these will stay in the greenhouse for now. Now hopefully they will germinate. The ones that we've sown just straight into the tub will need thinning out, pricking up into bigger pots as they grow and eventually get planted out. But the hope with the ones in the paper pots, they're not going to need any of that. They will go straight in the ground once I feel they are strong enough to go in the ground. Now the ground itself needs to be well prepared. Plenty of fresh compost, plenty of blood, fish and bone also helps with those. They will grow throughout the winter because these are a spring autumn sown variety. Get my words out one day. So they should do okay outside throughout the winter, and then eventually come next year, middle of next year, they should be at full size and ready for harvesting. As long as they're well watered, don't need much in the way of food in, and kept weed free, it should be good. Right guys, back to the studio. There we go. That is the second load of onions that we are growing from seed this year, and hopefully they should do quite well. Next week, I will try and give you an update on some of the seeds that we have sown so far, including the lettuce that we have treated with Digwell's super whatever, whatever it's called. Super soil, that's the word. I've got it written down there. It's quite interesting to see that. I'll leave it like that. I'll give you something to think about for next week. On that note, I do need a seed that I can sow next week for the sow along. So if you've got any ideas for that, let us know in the comments. So let's go back to the comments. Talking of that, Turbo Stream says got loads of brassica seeds left. Great for microgreens. So there's still quite a few seeds that we can actually still sow as well when it comes to brassicas, but always check the packets. What else have we got? Nicholas says, I'm looking forward to using my new grow lights. What's that weird noise? Looking forward to using my new grow lights and windowsill Garmin 7 tray heat propagator. Yep, with you on that. On the wife, I've had a discussion with the wife about where I can start seeds off, and she has said I could use, because I was using a kitchen windowsill, but it ended up taking over the windowsill, the worktop, kitchen table, and she weren't happy with that. So we're going back to the drawing board with that. But grow lights are definitely, there's a definite advantage to grow lights when you're starting seeds off early. Stuart says, Richard, you need a smaller scoop. Yeah, I could do. I don't normally have that problem. I'm trying to do paper pots. What I normally do is take my container, I haven't got one to hand, throw it into the compost in the bottom underneath, and then use that. So that was a bit of a different one to try and use a scoop. A teaspoon is good for filling paper pots. I'll note it for next time. I'd love hedgehogs. They're great. They are great. We got 3 of them in the garden. They set Roxy off, but they are great because they eat slugs and snails. Now they're back. We're definitely seeing them reduce the amount of slugs and snails we have in our gardens. So, yeah, great reason. If you can give them a home, if you can encourage them in the garden. I actually give them hedgehog food as well, just because they do such a good job. Digwell says, I use plant cell trays and plant out a whole onion in its plug. Yeah, good idea. Good idea, actually. Sorry, hiccups. Yeah, I've been doing a lot more of those plug cells this year, and that's something I want to do a bit more of next year, because it was just so easy. I've been planting out some of our Swiss chard that have grown in plugs. It's just so easy, isn't it, doing it in plug forms? Just so easy. Yeah. Digwell says, I'm banking on onion seeds this winter. No sets at all. I've got my sets, as you know, I've got my sets right here. So I will be doing some from sets. Based on, I think it was last week we were talking about this, based on the conversation that you guys had with me, I think we're going to be trying to concentrate on seeds more for our onions and see if we can get them growing better, which I think from what you guys say is a good, strong chance. So I'll come back to what seed do you want me to sow next week? I can throw out a few ideas if that would help. We could do chilies, we could do peppers, we could do daikon radish, we could do normal radish, we could do cabbages, cauliflowers, anything like that. Idea is it's a seed sow along. So I'll sow the seeds and make a video, and we'll try. I always forget to revisit them, but we will try and revisit them in the future. Next week, I will make a point of revisiting many of the seeds that you guys have sent in. So get your ideas going. I think for the mission, we're going to do this decent peat-free compost, because I know that has been a challenge for many of you. All right, let's. Turbo Stream just came in with a comment. I was going to give up onions, but decided to try growing under mesh. So sowed a few seeds to overwinter. Was it allium leaf miner your problem though? or was that something we discussed last week? Can't remember. But yeah. Right. Let's have a look at your photos. These are all photos that have been posted in our group. Not many this week. I know it's becoming a bit of a tricky time to get decent photos, but we still want to see them. We still love seeing your photos regardless. There's something about autumn as well. There's something quite magical about autumn. So first of all, Andrew from Croatia. His parsnips are looking a little forked. He has this problem every year, and I think it is due. I mean, he's got parsnips this year, which I think is an improvement, but the way they're forked, it's either a stony soil or compost on not mixed in well enough or something. So I don't know if Andrew is watching. I haven't seen him tonight. My advice would be to think about driving a drill into the ground and then try and sow into that, if that makes sense. Any questions, get in touch and I'll explain what I mean. Steve Digwell, his daughter has bagged this bargain. This is something we've seen in Wilkinson's ourselves. This is the type of thing I was talking about having at the back of our seed area. This is a staged growing station. They're about £10, I think I saw them in Wilko's at the moment, because obviously Wilko's are closing down. So I can't remember how much she got this one for, but if you are after bargains like this, head to Wilko's and see what you can get. I do recommend with these you put plenty of weight on the bottom, because they do have a tendency to get blown over in the winds. Now, Nikki, we were talking about September strawberries. She's found these strawberries on her plants and was wondering if it was a little bit unusual. The thing, it's not that unusual. If you've got an ever-bearing variety, there's a good chance it will produce strawberries. But again, with this balmy weather we've had this year and this sun heat wave this week, it's not surprising that that has happened. So enjoy it. I have had strawberries appear as late as November, maybe even December. So it's not unusual at all. Andrew has harvested a few tomatoes. I think he has suffered from blight as well, so he had to remove a few plants. But there's quite a few tomatoes here, all of which are looking like a really good mix of colour and size, which is always good to see, isn't it? And finally, Kate. We have seen Kate. This is Chili Kate. She will be working at this watercress plantation soon. This is something I'm quite excited to find out a bit more. We do try and grow watercress here, but it's a bit of a tricky one to grow. I know you don't necessarily need a stream or a river, but you do need lots of water to grow it. But this is one I'm quite excited to see, and hopefully we can do something about this in the future. What do you guys think of that? Are you interested in growing watercress? So please do keep sharing those photos. It's always good to see them. You can post them in our Facebook group, send to me via social media, or email me, richard@theveggrowpodcast.co.uk. Like I said, it's always good to see lots of these photos, no matter what they are showing. As long as it's veg garden related, then we're happy to see them. So please do keep sharing them. A few comments came in during that time. Let's have a look. Turbo Stream says last year's winter onions was full of leaf miner grubs. Yeah, I mean, again, that's not a problem I've had, so I'm not going to share my thoughts on that. But protection is probably the thing to think about. Do you want photos of winter projects? Yes, please. Always, whatever you're doing, I want to see photos. I always love the photos, and I look at every single one in the group. May not always comment, because I like to let other people have a comment first, but sometimes I might step in. But I like to see everybody's photos. Stuart Jackson, question time again. When should I sow my garlic my white early garlic. Thank you. So I'll be doing mine next weekend. I usually aim to get mine in around the 20th of September, but I will be doing mine next weekend, including these ones right here and a few others that we have as well. Going to be a busy time next weekend, I'll say that. I've thumbs up for this live. Thank you very much. Please do thumbs up if you haven't done so already. Maybe too rich a soil with the parsnips. Could be actually, yeah, it could be too rich soil. It could be a number of reasons, isn't it? Bill and Val's allotments. Lovely to see you yesterday. You see us doing some winter projects, Richard. I look forward to seeing what you're doing. I know we had a good conversation about it yesterday, funnily enough. So plenty of ideas came from that. Bethan's Kitchen Gun. I've had some strawberries lately too. The variety is Montana. Montana, that could, yeah, I can see why. I mean, it is balmy weather we've had, so the plants are just giving themselves another chance. Turbo Stream says, I resent a veg show, but yes, you did. Did they come through this time? Used WeTransfer as usual. Yes, you did. I've seen them. I just haven't downloaded them. So Stigwell sent me some over as well. I just haven't downloaded them just yet. Stuart Jackson says, I'm still picking peas and strawberries and outside tomatoes. I think it's time to pick the tomatoes and ripen inside. Give it another week and see what happens, I would say. But I think it is coming. October could be. It is coming to the end of tomato season, to say the least. Nicola says, in the bulk buy of netting I brought from Southwick, I had loads of micro mesh. So happy. Also capillary matting, weed suppressant, good quality bird netting, saved me a fortune. We all like, we all like to save a fortune, don't we? This is one of those things that everybody does do. Turbo Student says, some of my primrose plants were in flower this week. That is unusual, isn't it? It is unusual. I say it's just this balmy weather. It really has confused the poor plants into what should they do. All we got to remember, if things like, what I would say, things like strawberries, they're flowering plants, because they're doing this second burst of flowers and fruits, they are going to need a little bit more food, feed, fertilizer, just to help them out a little bit, because they're going to deplete that a little bit more. Just something to think about for next year if you want to keep your plants in strong, healthy, productive for next year. So yeah, that's a good idea. So I've just suddenly thought, for next week's sew along, I could actually do garlic. Is that okay with everybody if I do garlic? Because I'm going to be planting garlic out next week anyway. Let us know in the comments, because I would like, yeah, I mean, I let you guys know, but I want to do garlic, is my thoughts for the sew along. I usually sow my garlic around the 20th of September, the overwintering garlic, that is. I might do another sowing later on in the year, maybe into December, January. I'm not going to bother with a spring sown again because that was just pointless. But I'm thinking garlic for next week for the sew along, because I'm going to be doing it anyway. Yes to garlic, even though I don't grow it, says Turbo Stream. And Stuart Jackson says garlic sounds like a great idea. We're going to do, there's 2 votes for garlic. So we are going to be doing that. I mean, I'm going to be doing it anyway. So it's going to be something that goes on in the plan anyway. Excuse me. It's one of those things I've got to grow every year. It's one of my favorite things to grow as well, garlic, because I always feel this is like the start of the growing season, because the garlic and the onions start to go in for next year. We'll be putting in some cabbages and cauliflowers for next year as well. There's just so much going on for next year that I feel it is the start of the growing season, as I like to describe it. And then, of course, we'll put more of my beds on the allotment into good use, ready for the winter months, and should hopefully mean that come spring next year, all our beds are going to be fairly full with plenty of good stuff going on. Any beds that are empty over winter, something else I do as a winter project. Any empty beds over winter or empty spaces, I of course use our good old favourite of the green manures. I planted out some Phacelia the other day, and that's one of my favourite green manures, but also field beans, clover, and mustard are different types of green manures that we can also use. And these are all good. We haven't decided on a subject for next week, but we've discussed green manures in the past. On that note, we do need a subject for next week. Now, last week, why do we grow your own food was something that we did say we might do next week. Why do you grow your own food is a question I'm going to be asking. Let me know on your thoughts on that. Digwell says, no garlic for me in 2024. Well, not a garlic farm, except for prices, not financially worth it. Cheaper to buy 11 bulbs from a supermarket than one bulb to split and grow, in my honest opinion. That's fair enough, actually, because you are right. They have gone up. I got these from the range because there were 3 packs for a £5, which there's 2 garlic bulbs in now, which I don't think is too bad. So if you're to buy 3, that would be 6 garlic bulbs for £5 from the range. That helps. But the reason what I actually do is I actually save the biggest garlic bulb each year and replant that. So I'm not buying in from, I mean, I love a garlic farm, but I'm not buying it in every year. I'm actually, what I believe is I'm actually tailoring that garlic to my own allotment, to my own garden. So each year it gets better and better. That's my thoughts on it. Turbo Stream, my French beans in the bucket are still alive. Hopefully they flower soon so I can bring them in before it gets too cold. Mine haven't done anything, funny enough, Turbo Stream, on that night. Haven't done anything. Stuart says, I will have to catch up on next week live as I am away celebrating my wedding anniversary, 30 years. Congratulations. 30 years. That is amazing. Well done, buddy. My wedding anniversary soon as well. Just remembered that. But yeah, well, 30 years, absolutely amazing. I hope you have a good time wherever you are going. Happy with why do you grow your own food for next week? Okay, that sounds like a good idea. Digwell says that 3, 4, 5 is very cheap. It would be 6 bulbs for £5 if you go to the range, actually. 6 bulbs for £5. There's 2 per pack. So 3 packs for £5. Just a thought. Anna Jones says, yes, why do we grow our own food? Let's do that. And Turbo Stream says, happy 30th, Stuart. Nicholas says, my Jerusalem artichokes have not flowered. I've given up with Jerusalem artichokes, so can't comment on that. But I can't say I've seen them flowering anywhere thinking about it. It's been a weird year. The French beans will be grown on my south porch when they have set. Yeah, okay. I'm going to have to check on mine. I might have to move them into the greenhouse soon to try and spur them into a bit of growth. Why do we grow your own? Why do we grow GYO? Just make a note of that for next week. Digwell says, do they flower? Jerusalem artichokes? Yes, they do. They look like sunflowers. I mean, they are from the same sort of family, I believe. They're quite attractive, I've got to say, these big sort of yellow heads. But you don't really need them to flower to produce the stuff that's going on underground, which is what we usually eat. As I said, I've given up on growing them. We grew quite a few over the years, and they were always tasty. It's just they got out of control, and we weren't eating as many as we originally were. And it tends to be only me that was eating them as well. That was eating the Jerusalem artichokes. My wife wasn't too keen on them after a while. Wasn't too keen on the after effects, I should say. But again, you get used to it. Scott says, my Jerusalem artichokes haven't flowered either. I will be removing them this year. But I will be removing them this year. Removing them entirely? Not easy to get rid of, but you're removing them entirely like I decided to do. Lovely yellow flowers. And Nicholas says, yes, Digwell, small sunflower type. Sunflower family sunchokes. Indeed, yeah. I think they are, I do think they can be quite attractive flowers. They're very tall as well, aren't they? Very, very tall. Nicholas says, I'm growing for flower windbreaks in buckets. Ah, okay. Okay, that's a good idea. Entirely good idea. And Scott says, yes, getting rid entirely. Why are you getting rid of them, Scott? Let us know in the comments on that same matter. See if it's a similar reason as to why I'm getting rid of them. Well, we have got about 4 minutes to go, and I've realised I forgot to send a link for anybody to zap in, or I've got to find the phone. I don't know where the phone has gone. We've got to try and open up that phone line because it was always good to get the conversations going. Digwell says, so is it the same as spuds? If they flower, then the tubers lose weight. Don't know on that. They're pretty prolific at producing tubers. I don't know if it affects them in any way. I don't think it does, but logically speaking, there could be a good chance as to why. A good chance that they do. Adrian is off to bed. Good night, Adrian. Thank you very much for joining tonight. Digwell says, don't forget the vegetable show reminder. Yes, that is, I think it was 2 weeks away, isn't it? The 4th. Oh, yeah. Let me add the link. That's probably the alternative veg grower show. I've had quite a few pictures come in that we're going to be entering as well. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's the 4th of October from memory when we are doing the judging, which is not next Sunday, the Sunday after. I could be mistaken on that. Adrian, those photos you sent me today, I'm assuming are for that veg grower, not Adrian, sorry, Turbo Stream. The veg show, aren't they? The photos you sent in today, or were they for the live show? Digwell, the ones you've sent me are for this show as well, aren't they? If I remember correctly. Scott is saying, I plated way too many and they spread like mad, and just don't eat so many. Artichokes also another name. Yeah, it's the same as us. We grew them, they grew like mad. We just didn't eat that many. Excellent. Nicola says, I'll say goodnight, lovelies. Hope to see you all next week. Dad has been given just 11 weeks. So, Uncle, oh, mate, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry, Nicola. I'm really sorry to hear that. You look after yourself. Stuart says, I think the chat's been great again. That's probably why you forget the link. Honestly, I do. I've got to make a tick list, but sometimes when the chat is so good, like trying to get into everything, it's difficult. But that's why I like it. I want the chat to be the thing that we do. Digwell says, I will send more pics next weekend after Malvern. Thank you. Fantastic. Yeah, my photos for the veg show. Fantastic. Well, great stuff indeed. All right, we've got about 30 seconds left to go, so we're going to start wrapping up this evening. This has been a really good chat with everyone once again. Really good to get some good ideas from you guys on winter projects. You've made me think a bit more and possibly even think about hotbeds and things like that. So please do keep us updated with your winter projects throughout the winter months. Send your photos, send your videos, send anything that you want that we can use in the show. We're here every Sunday. We're here every Sunday at 6. Next week, we are going to be asking the question, why do we grow our own food? I'm going to really work on the monologue in the opening for that before I hand it over to you guys. We're also going to be sowing garlic, and we're going to find some decent peat-free compost. That's all coming up next week. So let's quickly wrap ourselves or get ready to get out of here. Thanks so much to everybody that has joined in the conversation, and thank you so much to everybody that has sent in photos. As I said, please do feel free to send some more in for next week. Right, guys, you take care. I'll speak to you again next time.